Ever tell you that I'm a Trekkie?
Oh, yay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was one of the first instances where I met our next featured artist. I was watching Star Trek Voyager, and he was seated in a scene next to one of my favorite character actors, Ray Walston. And he has gone on to many things, actually. In fact, he studied acting at the neighborhood playhouse under the tutelage of Sanford Meisner. Later to be cast in the NBC soap opera Somerset. He also studied with Stella Adler and worked on soaps, children's TV, Jabberwocky, and public affairs programming. His work in hosting the CBS News magazine Channel 2, The People, in 1974 earned him an Emmy nomination. During the 80s, he appeared in several feature films such as The Cotton Club and Presumed Innocent, and made his presence known in the 90s on primetime television. After several years of guest starring in dramas and sitcoms, he earned the chance into the universe of science fiction and enjoyed considerable success on such series as Space, Above and Beyond, The X-Files, and Babylon 5, as well as in the films Contact and Deep Impact. Theatrically, he has performed in several productions from Mark Taper, Cast Theater, and the Odyssey Theater. He continues to create an eclectic body of work, both in drama and in comedy, including his role as the, let me see if I got this right, Xindi, primate diplomat, on Star Trek Enterprise, and the controversial role of God on the Sarah Silverman program. His anthology of essays, Return to Eden, which detail his military service in and return to Vietnam, is available both in softcover and as an audiobook, MP3, as well as on Kindle through lulu.com/Tucker Smallwood. Let us welcome Mr. Tucker Smallwood.
This is a chapter from my book that describes someone who was then and it remains very dear to me. And I call this chapter MCMURPHY. I'm sure I'm not alone in having a thing for nurses. just something about their firm calves and those white stockings, practical shoes, and the way they're starched blouses. Okay, anyway. I've had my share of crushes on nurses. They're just so damn perfect. They're comfortable with their bodies. They give great massages. They have no issues with scars. And now that I think about it, my second girlfriend was a nurse. I named my puppy in Tan Nhut in Vietnam after her. In the TV series China Beach, the actress Dana Delaney created an iconic character, Army Nurse Colleen McMurphy. She was tough, competent, caring, sexy, human, and her emotion was never self-indulgent. It was always earned. I very much admired her work in that show, and eventually I got to tell her so. But I digress. In the wards of 3rd Field Hospital in Saigon, Army officer nurses were stressed beyond belief. They contended daily with an abundance of young broken bodies and shattered spirits. Some of their patients were not going to get any older. Some wished for an end to their pain. These women had to find that nurse's balance between caring for these men and yet maintaining some emotional distance. Each found her own formula, but many of them came home as haunted as the men for whom they'd cared. Later, back in America, I can remember waking up in ICU at Walter Reed after one surgery to a warm, sunny smile And I realized I'd seen that face before. I said to her, I thought I dreamt you. Apparently she'd cared for me after an earlier surgery, and I'd been so groggy I assumed she was just a product of my wishful thinking. And I promptly forgot her. I wonder what happened to you, she said. You never stopped by afterwards. I begged her forgiveness and promised to rectify that lapse in judgment. Thomasina and I began dating a few weeks later and spent several enjoyable months together. Then they sent her to Vietnam. I have a picture of my nurse from Vietnam, but I can't remember her name. I searched in vain for years, wanting to thank her, to tell her how much it meant to me, how much it all meant to us, that fragile time in our lives. After about a week at Third Field, I was coming along. I'd learned to shower with plastic wrapped around my thigh to prevent my metal sutures from rusting. I was still losing weight. I was still fed intravenously, and still grateful to be around. That had not yet gotten old. My veins were all pretty tired, and one weary nurse was having a tough time getting my IV properly installed. She failed time after time, and I was losing patience. That shit really hurt. A spry, elderly bird colonel appeared beside her, sussed the situation, and without a word, relieved her of the needle. In one deft move, she inserted that IV into my challenged veins with certainty. She smiled and wheeled away. I exchanged a grateful smile with the younger nurse. We were both relieved. She'd been doing her best, and I had never doubted that, but still, it's nice to find an old pro when you need one. At the end of my second week, I overheard my doctors debating the removal of my trach. He's doing well. He's fought off infection. Maybe we can get him started on soft foods. Well, let's give it a little more time. Later that night, I lay there, feeling a bit sorry for myself. There may have been a few tears in my ears, I'm not saying. I'd had nothing to eat or drink for 14 days. Into the darkness of the ward appeared my very favorite nurse, an anticipatory smile on her face, and holding a small Dixie cup of vanilla ice cream. She came to the side of my bed. She saw that I was awake, and she lifted a small spoonful of heaven to my lips. That remains the single most intense experience of flavor I have ever known. 2 more spoonfuls, each sweeter than the last. And then she put her finger to her lips to remind me that this was our secret. And she slipped out of the ward. I lay there in the dark, smiling with the memory of our tryst, eternally grateful for that kindness. I hope she knows how much I loved her in that moment. Now, when my book, Return to Eden, was published in 2006, someone had served in Vietnam with my nurse, bought my book, and he recognized the picture. Leo sent me an email, offered to put the 2 of us in touch. I asked him to first ensure that she was comfortable talking to a patient from so many years ago. Not everyone welcomes awakened memories from Vietnam. When I received her permission and her phone number from him, it took me some hours to gather my courage, and I called her home. I don't know how many of you can relate to the immediacy of such a circumstance, how very attuned, how heightened our consciousness becomes. I am about to journey decades back in time, revisiting the most challenging experience of my life. She answered, and we then shared an emotional and very personal conversation. Afterwards, I emailed her a copy of the chapter I'd written about her. And 5 years later, we were reunited at a reunion for Third Field Hospital personnel held in Chicago. I gratefully flew in for that event. But right now, I want to read to you the first email she sent me after having read my memories of her. Dear Tucker, after reading your chapter about me, I am so back in Vietnam. What an honor to hear from you after so many years. To have a chance to tell you how much I loved you and all the brave young men I took care of is one of my greatest wishes. You all meant so much to me. I am so blessed to have taken care of such brave young men. I have felt truly honored since that experience. My caring touch, my smile, my compassion, my passion as a nurse to care for your wounds and care for your spirits was truly my mission. In my 38 years as a nurse, that 1 year as a nurse in Nam pretty much shaped me in my nursing and my life too. I was forever changed. Some good and some not so good. I too suffer from PTSD. I get counseling from time to time. But I have managed to raise 2 great kids and I've been married for 30 years. 36 years. Please believe me, it was such an honor to care for you and to help you heal. I am haunted each day about the hundreds of young men I cared for, wondering what happened to them. To know you made it makes me feel so warm in my heart. You all are forever imprinted in my heart. Please keep in touch, and hopefully we can meet someday soon, and I can give you a big hug. Love, Ellen. Your McMurphy. This is my picture of Ellen. This is what the soldier recognized in the book. I'd like to read another chapter simply because of the coincidence of timing, tomorrow being Easter. It's entitled Mahalia. For whatever reasons, on this Christmas day, I'm remembering an Easter Sunday years ago. I recently heard a spiritual, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, and flashed back to the late 70s when I was performing in Mahalia, a musical play based on her life. In the first act, I was a member of the choir and other supporting characters. In the second act, I was Menace, her third husband. Menace was a jazz pianist, a charmer, and a philanderer. Keith David played her first husband. When preparing the character, I struggled to find that emotional connection between him and Mahalia. She was obviously wealthy and renowned, but hardly an object of physical desire. I thought back to a preview performance I'd seen years before of a musical called Soon. The cast included Barry Bostwick, Peter Allen, and Richard Gere. During that performance, an actress appeared on stage and ascended a staircase to a single spotlit balcony. She was rather short, rather stout, and not particularly attractive. And then she began to sing. And in that moment, she became the most beautiful, the most desirable, and the most compelling woman in the universe. In a theater seating hundreds, she sang to me. Each member of the audience had that same experience. Her voice, her music, her message was received individually. Her name was Nell Carter. That memory explained why Menace loved Mahalia, loved her on every level. Her art, her majestic gift transcended mere physical attractiveness and made her all things desirable. And during the run of this musical, written by John Lewis of the Modern Jazz Quartet, each night my character Menace fell in love with Mahalia, who was performed by the incomparable Esther Marrow, herself a Mahalia protege. I was then living in New York City, and our performances were in Stamford, Connecticut, which meant a daily drive or a train ride to the theater. I'd arranged the rental of a station wagon, and a number of the cast shared that drive each day. It was a time of fellowship, jokes, bickering, the animated energy generated by a theatrical troupe. Today was Easter Sunday. I then lived on Central Park West, and I had my pre-show rituals. My day would begin with a walk along the park to buy the Sunday Times while reflecting upon last night's performance and my intentions for today's matinee and evening show. The morning was warm and sunny. The work was going well, and I was looking forward to really nailing my featured love song to Mahalia today. There had been some drama in the past regarding my inclination to venture from the notes written and to improvise. I'm not a Broadway baritone. I'm not even really a singer in the true sense of the word. You'd be surprised how being shot through the throat affects your voice. But I am musical and a fairly interesting actor. So, each show, I walk that fine line of fulfilling the intentions of the composer and fulfilling my own need to express the truth of my character. I tell them, well, Esther improvises, and then they tell me, well, yeah, but she's Esther Marrow. As I approached the newsstand on the corner of Central Park West and 100th Street, I noticed two young men exiting the park and running across the street towards me. One wore a red windbreaker. They seemed Hispanic, or is Latino more correct these days? As they reached my side of the street and stopped 10 feet away, one cried out, "You killed him! You killed him!" The other drew a revolver from his waist, cocked it, and aimed it at my chest. Time stops, as it does in such moments. One takes in everything. Everything. The smells, the lights, the sounds are all super heightened, and the ultimate Kodachrome. I wondered in abstract, whimsical dispassion, does he mean Jesus? It is Easter Sunday. And then he pulled the trigger. Imagine standing inside a wind tunnel, yet within the eye of a hurricane. Everything around us roared and swirled, but the microcosm, this microcosm was absolute stillness and silence. There was a click. The sound of a hammer striking what? A faulty cartridge, a damaged firing pin, an empty chamber? Only God knows, and he ain't talking. His friend said, man, you fuck it up. In those instants, I'd taken perhaps one step towards them, perhaps two, and I have no idea what I intended. They proceeded to wheel about, race across Central Park West, and disappear into the park. I stood there for some moments. There was no one around. No one. I collected myself. I entered the corner newsstand. I bought my Sunday New York Times and walked back to my home. There I called the police and I told them what had happened. They eventually came by. I gave a report and they left to search for the pair. They told me, "You were menaced." Curious. The subtle difference between menaced and murdered. Just an unreliable weapon. In subsequent years, when I recounted this experience, friends, knowing something of my temperament and history, asked, "So what'd you do then? Did you take his gun and pistol whip the snot out of him?" I tell them that life is seldom like a movie. That I simply stood there, remembering close calls in Vietnam, grateful that this encounter had ended so well. After about an hour or so, I picked up the rental car. I met my cast members and we began the drive to Stamford. I don't remember discussing the morning events. Not sure why. During Act 1, as we began to sing, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, I suddenly broke down in tears on stage. I just lost it. Right there on stage in front of 1,000 people. I was led backstage by someone and just sobbed and sobbed inconsolably. There was a discussion, could I continue? Could I regroup? They covered for me until the end of the first act. And during the intermission, I got my own act together. Act 2 proceeded without incident. And I seem to recall I sang my solo rather well that day. And now, it's time for cupcakes.
Yes!
Yeah.